Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Scott. And for this week, we are super excited to talk about the new 2024 Toyota Tacoma. This vehicle is all new from the ground up, and they've addressed all of the things that we saw as cons about the vehicle in previous podcasts. This thing is going to be available with up to 1,700 pounds of payload, 33-inch tall tires. It's going to have a Trailhunter package built specifically for overlanding. The list goes on and on and on, so please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation about the all-new Tacoma with Matt and Scott. This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com. Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Scott, and we are all smiles and excitement this morning.
Toyota's back!
Because the Tacoma is back.
Yeah. Man, where do we even start? I mean,
there's a lot to talk about this
ground up refresh. I think we were all big fans of the second generation Tacoma.
And the first gen, of course.
And the first gen. The third gen, honestly, there's nothing wrong with it. It just, that's where, I'm not going to say that Toyota was asleep at the wheel, but you really started to see the competition come into that segment.
Correct.
You started to see the Colorado ZR2 that was like, in my opinion, kind of mind-bending for the segment.
Yep.
And now Toyota's responding.
They really are.
And in earnest, like they're out for blood in their own little Toyota way.
That's what it feels like. It feels like they've taken it so seriously, and it's almost like they listened to the podcast.
Yeah,
because we've both trusted our lives to Toyotas 100%. Around the world, but the Tacoma slowly became less appropriate as a tool with the limitations of the frame, the limitations of payload.
It was enjoyable to drive.
Yeah. Third gen we're talking about.
The third gen. I mean, that motor was a little weird just in how it operated, the whole Atkinson cycle thing.
And then the 6-speed and the very, very high first gear, it needed to be, at least a 4.5 to 5 or 5-to-1 first gear was a very high first gear. So it just kind of made it terrifying.
You had to put like 488s in it or something to make it drive right. And there were issues, but boy, I don't even know where to start on this. So I know I do know where to start. This Trailhunter thing. I think the name's a little tacky.
The name is an interesting one. It's probably just that they couldn't find another good name because there's so many names that are that are locked down now.
The design guy's last name is also Hunter, so I wondered if he worked his way into that
into perpetuity.
But it's really cool. I mean, if we were to sit down a couple years ago and say, what would the ultimate aftermarket and OE collaboration be? For me, it would probably still be AEV and Ram or something. But number two for me would be ARB and Toyota. I mean, they are just, does a 70 series not get an ARB bumper at some point in its life?
Exactly.
They're so hand in hand. And this Trailhunter truthfully kind of was co-developed by ARB. I mean, they had ARB engineers working at Toyota, which is
so cool.
Really cool.
And ARB it's in many of the same ways that AEV does. This is a brand that we have all trusted. We've seen just consistent quality, performance, durability. They do a lot of the same kinds of coatings and finishes as the OEM does. So that the ARB bumper is going to last a while without being a corroded mess. Yeah. And then, of course, they have the capability of integrating with the safety systems of the vehicle. So you can see on this Trailhunter how much ARB is integrated. So you have actually labeled Old Man Emu suspension on the Trailhunter, which is so cool. Yeah. Clearly, ARB would have also been involved with some of the spring tuning, which this is one of the questions that we don't have answered yet based upon the information that we have. I have asked Toyota, and they kind of skirted the question in their reply, but we don't know what the payload is going to be on the Trailhunter. There is a lot of good things to talk about around payload with these vehicles because it's a huge improvement. But we actually just don't know where that one's going to end up at. But if ARB had anything to do with it, as far as the spring rates, it's probably going to be well suited to some higher payload numbers.
Yeah, and I think it's really brave of Toyota to kind of split the market between the go fast desert crowd and the overlanding crowd. Because I mean, myself included, if you wanted kind of that somewhat factory prepped off-road truck, let's go down the lines of ZR2, Raptor, TRX. They worked for the overlandy style travel, and it was nice to have those things done from the factory, but that wasn't their actual purpose. And there are so many people taking these desert trucks and trying to make them overlanders and throwing away all that suspension tuning and throwing away everything that went into it for the go fast side of things. I think it's really cool.
I agree. And they actually are quite different. And that was actually one of the comments in the long form press release, was that Toyota was very intentional about segmenting the different models.
Yeah.
So they have an affordable SR model that you can get a manual transmission in. They have an SR5. You can get a manual transmission. You can even still get the extra cab, and that gives you 1,700 pounds of payload. There's some unanswered questions around that, like, can you still get the TRD package? They traditionally had like an option check of, I want the TRD package, which gave you the rear locker, some slightly different shock absorbers and things like that. There's some unanswered questions on if you can still do that with the extra cab. Mm-hmm. But if you want to maximize payload, you can get 1,709 pounds, which just ever so slightly beats out the 6-speed manual Gladiator by 9 pounds, which is kind of funny.
It's kind of a little...
Yeah, I know Toyota well enough where it's almost like I think it's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
I don't really think that they would be like, oh, we're going to beat them by 9 pounds. I think that it's probably what it came back at.
Yeah.
Because Toyota isn't, they're not that way.
They're a fairly conservative company. Yeah, there's a lot of different, I guess, specs and levels that you can get this truck in. I'm just looking at the Limited, and since I'm a slut for nice interiors, heated and cooled seats in a Tacoma.
And it even gets more interesting because you can get it with the iForce Max with an all-wheel drive transfer case.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So you end up with this luxury mid-size truck that has, think of your kind of, especially with the iForce Max, where you have the advantages of it being a hybrid at high elevation. So you got your ski mountain, ski town, you got your heated seats, you got your heated steering wheel, you've got your all-wheel drive, you got 465 foot-pounds of torque, I think is what it is.
This is the large leap forward that we've been hoping and praying was coming from Toyota. I mean, it would have been very bad news had they taken the 3rd gen and thrown a different motor in it. Yeah. That platform was just getting old and it couldn't keep up with the competition that was out there. I mean, if you think about it, in the last couple months, what we've seen, 2024 Ranger and Ranger Raptor, GM and Chevy, Colorado and Canyon. Yep. Geez. And then this, I mean, people are like, this segment is really, really heating up. And I think that's really cool.
And the big shot across the bow of the segment was, of course, the Gladiator, which had big numbers to begin with. But this was interesting. I've been doing some research for this podcast around production numbers, and the Tacoma is still by far the most sold midsize.
There's
at
a
over
lot of brand loyalty there,
of over 200,000 units. But the second one in line is the GM product. So they came in at 111,000 units. And so they came out of like last place to second place within a matter of just a few years. But Gladiator numbers are off a little bit, but there's still
a lot of competition going for the Gladiator.
80,000 units of the Gladiator. So the midsize truck segment is just very popular. And there's a lot of great capability in it now too.
I'm very excited to see what, I know this podcast is focused on the new Tacoma, but we know that there's upgrades coming to the Gladiator in the next couple of years. They just announced that they're going to do the 2-liter 4xe powertrain, which I think is really cool.
One of my favorite powertrains on the planet right now.
And then they have that Hurricane Straight 6 coming that's eventually supposed to make its way into Gladiator, Jeep, and all of these things. Really, it's going to be really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, like, what a great time to be alive as an overlander. I mean,
we're getting mid-sized trucks with some payload.
Yep. And I think that one of the things that stood away from me when I read all of this on the new Tacoma is it feels like we're finally getting the Hilux back. And I'll explain a couple reasons why that's the case. So this vehicle is built on the new series platform, which is what they build the Land Cruiser on. Yeah. This is going to be redimensioned, of course, for it being a narrower vehicle, but this is an extreme duty frame that it's fully boxed, has additional frame members, cross members. So you're going to get away from that frame limitation that we've had with the Tacoma for so long. It's also going to have disc brakes in the rear. It's going to have heavier duty axles. You can see it in the photographs. These are heavy duty axles.
I'm very interested in this kind of parts swapping environment between Tundra, Sequoia, Land Cruiser, Tacoma now.
And you had an interesting comment earlier about these wide track Tacomas.
Yeah. So TRD Pro and Trailhunter, I guess it's important to say that we don't have all the information at this point. We're recording this a couple days before
embargo lifts.
So some of this is interpreting what we're seeing, and it should be taken as opinion or speculation. But the Trailhunter and the TRD Pro are 3 inches wider than the standard,
that's right,
variants.
SR5, yeah.
And you can't get that through wheel offset as a manufacturer. That's just too much. It really makes me wonder if these vehicles are getting the Tundra front end on it. Are they getting a Tundra rear axle? Because then you're thinking gross axle weights for the rear and actual payloads and things. Maybe they could feasibly actually get some decent payload.
It would have to be wider front control arms. So if you've got a narrower frame overall than the Tundra, and then you put the Tundra axles and control arms on there, you end up with this slightly wider version of a Tacoma. I think your thoughts are very
It would be interesting. I mean, we've seen that happen in the aftermarket. Like you could take the Titan stuff and swap that onto the Frontier. Mm-hmm. It would all maybe seem to work. I mean, heck, you could do that on the Land Cruiser too, where you take the Tundra front control arms, put them on the 200 series Land Cruiser, and it was like a factory long travel kit. That's interesting. I think while we're on the subject of this Trailhunter, it doesn't have an ARB front bumper. It has an ARB rear bumper, and they really hype it up, and it looks great.
It does, and the recovery points.
And I'm gonna give them some grace on this, and I think that everybody else should too. It is really, really hard to get pedestrian safety certifications for this kind of stuff. You have to be looking forward and having reserve capacity for the legislation that maybe manufacturers know is coming. Mm-hmm. So we knew that this Trailhunter concept was kind of coming out. In my mind, I'm like, oh, it's going to have, the ARB bumper on the front. Well, I think you just do that aftermarket and you throw away the plastic bumper that's on there, which does look different and kind of cool.
And given ARB's involvement with the package, they probably already have it in boxes ready to go.
Probably is. So
we may even see it at the Overland Expo this next week.
The rock rails look pretty cool.
And they're frame mounted, so they're very durable rock rails. Do we want to kind of go through the Trailhunter specs?
Yeah. Why don't you?
So it looks like that the Trailhunter is only going to be available in the iForce Max. You're going to get maximum fuel economy, but you're only going to get the automatic. So you're not going to be able to get a manual transmission. The one thing I found most interesting, and there's a bunch of nuggets kind of deep into some of the copy on the press release, but you can get the Trailhunter in a double cab long bed. So that's going to clearly be the Overland variant. So you have a 6-foot bed for a full length go fast camper or some other lightweight camper system. You're going to end up with a lot of storage space overall. You end up with 2.5-inch diameter Old Man Emu monotube position sensitive shock absorbers, and they do have piggyback style remote reservoirs on them. You've got the Trailhunter Forge aluminum upper control arms. They're bronze colored. That's what I was laughing at. Then you have a locking rear differential super key. This is a big update.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, say it.
Front swaybar disconnect.
I know. It's such a big deal.
I should say that in a sexier voice. Front swaybar disconnect.
There you go. Slowly, Matt, slowly. But it's like what we just tested on the new Grand Cherokee, where you have this driver activated front swaybar really disconnect. Cool. And this is what's interesting to me is I suspect that this is only going to be available with the 5-link rear end. And what we saw in the Tundra was less articulation out of the rear end with the 5-link than we saw with the leaf springs. And that's because of the positioning of the shocks. The shocks are positioned outside of the frame, which limits packaging. And because it's further outside the frame, they'd have to be much longer in order to provide the same amount of articulation. you probably have less articulation with the 5-link rear, which means they had to address it somehow.
Yeah.
And they did it by adding the swaybar disconnect in the front, which according to the literature says you get a 10% increase in ramp travel index.
And I think that that's super cool. It also
Super cool. And it should ride a lot better too.
I think
Less
that's
head toss.
having experienced this on Jeeps that I've owned, that's the real ticket thing here.
Ride quality improves.
4-wheel drive, turn that front sway bar off. And it's just, when you, as an occupant, you can feel it when you're off-road.
You're not getting tossed around. Yeah. It makes a big difference in off-road ride comfort.
So auxiliary DC switches is kind of cool.
Yeah.
We've seen that historically from, I think Ford really was the one that led that. Then Jeep and Ram and all of those guys came along. Super cool, because anybody that's modifying their truck, lights, whatever, can take advantage of that. And, I really support it, because I have seen too many trucks burn down from sketchy wiring. And that's really started to change in this S-Pod Switch Pro trigger system kind of era. And I think that those things are fantastic. I just noticed heated and cooled seats on Trailhunter and TRD Pro. It's just kind of a nice thing.
It is. You think that cooled seats are ridiculous until you try it and you're like, oh my God.
I'd almost rather, living in Arizona, cooled seats are they're
so
a big
good.
thing.
They're so good. Well, and 33-inch Goodyear Territory tires, which I have found to be a nice hybrid tire. They're not, they're kind of mud terrainy. They're kind of all-terrainy. They're really a nice balance, and 33 inches in diameter. The one thing that's a little bit of a is the 18-inch wheels.
Yeah.
We've talked about this on the podcast before, but you want the tire wheel package to be as close to as possible, the tires being twice the diameter of the wheels. So with them being an 18-inch wheel, you need to have a 36-inch diameter tire in order to hit that optimal balance. It could be something to do with the brake packaging.
It could be something that's also solvable in the aftermarket.
Right. And hopefully so. 17-inch wheels are a better choice. I can see the 18-inch wheels on the TRD Pro because it's very much a go-fast truck now.
It's the brakes, right? And we're probably seeing a lot of Tundra components. Again, this is very early days.
Yep.
But I would have to think Toyota has this history of parts sharing and not redeveloping products that are already developed. Components, I should say. Heads-up display too. You liked
the rigid white amber switchable LED lights.
Yeah,
that was
I think
interesting.
that's super cool, because the yellow is obviously nice for when it's severe fog
or rain,
or whatever. You can have a little bit of individuality there, and it's just I think it's just a different chip that goes in there that is switchable. So I think that's a kind of a cool innovation.
And it does come
I would love to see that stuff more in the aftermarket, and it's cool to see that happening here.
Yep.
So I'll definitely be watching rigid.
And then there's an integrated LED light bar in the grille. The Trailhunter has the frame mounted rock rails. It has an ARB steel rear bumper. The recovery hooks they look to be full gross vehicle weight rating, if not higher rating. Yeah. It looks like they run down the frame members, so they've got to be looks like they're super heavy duty ARB aftermarket recovery points, which have been legendary for quality. Yeah. The bed utility bar, not really digging that. You can see it in the photos. We'll put those into the podcast, but
kind of TRX, it's very like 90s.
I get it on the TRD Pro, but it doesn't make any sense on the Trailhunter.
Yeah.
So that would end up being.
I did read that they're going to have a kind of that Baja bar style thing, and then they'll have a full length.
That's an option.
But think about this. Like if I was, I am in the automotive aftermarket for work. I'm looking at this and I'm like, people are probably still going to mess with them, but we're getting a truck that out of the box, from the dealer, you can get an engineered bed rack, just all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And
put it all into your payment, put it all into your warranty.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Definitely from, people that we've talked to on the OE side, they recognize how much money they're losing by not having that stuff, go out of their door versus the aftermarket. And
we're seeing them do it.
Yeah.
Across the board.
I'm looking at this and I'm like, boy, Tacoma 33s, maybe 35s and a little lift and whatever, but do you actually need to anymore?
Not really.
Does it become more of a matter of personal styling at that point?
Maybe on Jeeps, that's still very much the case.
Yeah. Should we hop over to TRD Pro?
In one moment, because there's one more thing I wanted to talk about, which was interesting. So from the Overlander perspective, because it's the iForce Max, it has a 2400 watt inverter in the bed. So when you've got your camper system, you have a 12 volt outlet in the bed and a 2400
The 12
watt.
volt outlet, I'm super excited for because, well, it's a pain to have to do that in the aftermarket. And if you want to put a fridge back there or whatever, it's already done.
It's got this gigantic battery pack. So what I'm curious of is, does the hybrid battery pack, it's like 1.8 kilowatts.
It's a nickel metal hydride battery pack.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's a 1.87 kilowatt hour.
I think that Jeep's doing that on the 4xEs now, but it's AC only. It's not 12 volt.
But that's the cool thing. You could have this 2400 watt inverter running off of the built-in batteries.
That'd be really, really cool.
I mean, it could be.
That's your Honda generator.
Totally.
That you bring with you.
Oh yeah.
That you no longer have to.
Well, think of the stuff that can run off of that battery pack. That's a big battery pack. You could run an air conditioner for a period of time off of that. You could run compressors. You could do all of your charging of your electronic devices. You could, at 2400 watts, you could run an induction cooktop.
Yeah.
So you could integrate all of that with just the factory system within the truck, which, think about it, it doesn't add any more weight.
It would be really cool if it could run off of that.
Yeah. So those are some hopeful insights. So now you're digging the TRD Pro a little bit.
Well, actually, the thing I just noticed too is integrated high output air compressor in the bed.
Yeah.
On the Trailhunter. Again, it's like one less thing that you have to do. Just buy the thing and go use it.
Yeah, exactly.
The TRD Pro, it interests me.
I mean, it seems like the seats are of real interest.
Yes. Okay. So there are I'm going to make sure I enunciate this correctly. Isodynamic performance seat. It looks interesting. I get it. So you can only do so much with the chassis. And if you're trying to improve ride quality and you only have so much within the packaging of the vehicle, you can only get so much wheel travel. I mean, just like Unimogs do, commercial trucks do. I mean, guaranteed the UPS or FedEx driver that delivers your packages has a
suspended seat.
And a suspended seat. It's interesting to see it in this. I hope that people realize that it doesn't actually make your car go any faster. It's just
going to be more comfortable
thing. And it looks a bit,
there's
a bit like 1990s Fast and the Furious, or I guess early 2000s. Like
it's very Fast and the Furious, and it even has little gauges on it, probably that show like the amount of travel that you're. So like imagine your poor passenger in the back that's trying to monitor. So there's
the problem with all of this is that now when you go to like Cars and Coffee or whatever,
basically I have a trophy truck. Like I've only got 10 inches of travel, but I've got these isodynamic seats, and it's basically a trophy truck. It's trophy truck technology.
And people aren't going to shut up about it. And that's going to be really
and then they're going to drive it like a trophy truck.
Yeah. But it's still a Tacoma underneath.
Yeah. Which is not to take anything away from the car. It's not a trophy truck.
So
it may keep them out of the hospital possibly, but it's not going to save the truck.
It'll be interesting to see if with this, people start to overdrive them.
Yeah, could be.
Because, all of a sudden it would require some careful marketing.
It's an interesting addition.
Yeah.
I think
it might work really, really well, but it is at this point a little left field.
Yeah.
Maybe. The TRD
just as long as somebody comes up with like some thoughtful little covers for it, so you don't have to like stare at the. It looks like the T series, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like his neck shots or something.
I mean, like they're interesting, and I'm sure people will geek out about it.
No, it's a cool technology.
Like I said, Unimogs use that kind of same, different application.
I get it. It's just it is different. It's such a unique thing.
I mean,
but it also, like you said, it further differentiates TRD Pro as the Go Fast vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's 3 inches wider. It's 1.5 inches to 2 inches taller than the standard Tacoma, 33-inch tall tires. So it's clearly meant for Fox internal bypass switchable shocks.
Shocks that would be very similar to what's on the current new generation Tundra. It's interesting. A lot of the stuff kind of parallels the Trailhunter. You still get the ARB steel rear bumper, the fog lights, and a lot of that kind of thing.
But it is interesting because they have an aluminum front skid plate on the TRD Pro and a hot stamp steel skid plate on the Trailhunter. So they're trying to have some differentiation in actual functionality. Which
it's just like the TRD Pro has become inherently less interesting to me
Yeah, because the Trailhunter really solves it. In their documentation, they actually refer to it as their Overland vehicle. So yeah, it's a factory developed Overlander straight from Toyota. That's Toyota's words. So clearly, and we heard it at SEMA last year with the VP of marketing saying Toyota is all in on overlanding.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that they're all in on overlanding. And this is the part
I mean, the like 10-page press release, probably, you could play a game every time Toyota says overlanding, take a shot. You won't make it to the end.
You wouldn't make it to the end, which is a good thing. And this is when it's so funny when people will say like, we're at peak overlanding. We haven't even started. Right now, the OEMs are actually getting into overlanding, which of course it can make it very...
I think we hit peak bolting stuff onto your truck for no purpose. Maybe.
Hopefully.
I think there's a lot of bored people during the pandemic, but
exactly.
So here's what I want to talk about on TRD Pro and Trailhunter, because I do want to dedicate time to TRD Sport, TRD Off-Road, because realistically for most people, those are going to be the best buys.
SR5, TRD Off-Road. If it's available, it isn't clear that it is. So we still don't know.
Yeah, there's not a full build spec sheet available.
Yeah,
yet.
We just don't quite know if you can get the iForce extra cab SR5 with the TRD package, which would include the rear locker and a manual transmission. If you could, that would be the Scotty spec.
Yeah.
White truck, extra cab, 1,700 pound payload.
And I'm looking at this TRD Off-Road, but here's what I want to talk about. I just tried to buy a Tundra TRD Pro. Okay. They end up being, I think they're 69,000 and change MSRP. But here's the problem: dealer markup. And this is something that is seriously going to affect this new Tacoma. Obviously, we know a lot of people are interested in them. It is a significant upgrade.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of interest. These days, pretty standard. If there's interest in the truck, you're looking anywhere from a $5,000 to $15,000 markup. It wouldn't surprise me if the first ones on the lot, in Southern California are even selling for more of that. So this is where I want to go. Why I like the TRD Off-Road is you're probably not going to pay a dealer markup on a TRD Off-Road. The TRD Pro, the Trailhunter, they're going to be more expensive. Pricing, to be very clear, has not been released yet. But to me, these seem like trucks that are going to be in the high 50s, low 60s range by looking at, competitive comparisons where the current vehicle is priced. So, at high 50s, low 60s for this Trailhunter, cool, great. But it's really going to be probably 70s or 80s. And that is just a reality of where we are right now.
At what point do like consumer advocacy groups come in and put some pressure on these dealers to stop?
They're just so bad.
They're just abusing consumers. It's not Toyota's fault. Toyota sets the MSRP.
My Toyota dealer, I'm like, okay, cool. They told me 2,500 to 3,700 over sticker was their local thing. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm fine with that. And then I get the out the door price and, there's a $10,000 thing thrown on there and a $2,000 tint package and a this and a that and whatever. And it's predatory.
Yeah.
Buying a car from a new car dealer 95% of the time really, really sucks.
Yeah.
It's there's so many pain points at so many different things. And then there's not even the interest markup.
It's almost like it's their tactic. They abuse you so much that you finally...
I would love to just go online and because everybody's building trucks these days anyways because of the lead time. So you get exactly what you want. Cut the dealers out of it. Let them service cars because that's where they make their money anyways. And, it's like the people that couldn't become cell phone salesmen, 99% of the time become car salesmen. There's great ones out there.
Absolutely. And there's great dealer experiences. Like if you go to a Lexus dealer, you have a different experience.
Yeah, but it is so bad.
Ford has been enforcing these pricing gouging, trying to. No,
the other truck I tried to go and buy was a Tremor. You try and buy a Tremor right now, $20,000 over sticker is what I was getting out of Phoenix and the dealer here in Prescott. We're talking about the Tremor. Yeah, it's got some unique front springs and it's got tuned gas shock absorbers.
Yeah.
There's maybe $1,000 of value there, and you're charging
the winch.
The winch is $3,999 aftermarket.
Got it.
Fitted at the dealer, not on the assembly line. My point being is, at MSRP, these vehicles can be great value. I think to have it just all done is really, really cool. And then you make your little tweaks and stuff from there. But again, how much of this stuff are you going to be taking off anyways?
Yeah.
And then if you throw that $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 dealer, added markup on there,
well, so then
do they actually become relevant? Because that truck at 70 or 80,
doesn't
like
feel
there's
like so
somebody
much of a
that's going to be driving a TRD off road in the 40s, solidly equipped, and then you ask yourself, is it worth $30,000 or $40,000 extra?
Yeah,
because that's what it ends up being. And again, we don't know final numbers, but if Toyota's listening, that's going to be a pain point for consumers.
Well, and what we can do on the podcast, because of the size of the audience, if anybody knows of a dealership that doesn't gouge their customers, that sells at MSRP for a Toyota dealership, let us know.
Yeah.
We'll put it out there. We will gladly support that dealership.
100%. And I think, while I'm on my soapbox, looking at that Tundra TRD Pro, I mean, you could like grab the front grille and move it. It was so plasticky. So I really, really hope that with the Tacoma, they have listened to their traditional customers who are saying, oh man, the styling in that's a little bit weird. The build quality is a little bit weird. I mean, for the first time, we're seeing Toyota having reliability issues when they launched it. How much of that is just pandemic, supply chain, chaos, whatever? I don't know. Yeah,
any reliability issues are going to be short run for Toyota.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But these vehicles are getting up there in price. And again, when you throw the reality of the current market with these dealer ADMs, I hope that the build quality is worth the squeeze, that they're asking for price, because, I know that a Gladiator, for example, the build quality is actually really, really good on it. I know on the, the Chevy stuff, the build quality has improved hugely. Hugely is not a word, but we'll see.
And then they've also done well on some of the reliability rankings recently.
Yeah, exactly. So people are nipping on the toes. Interested to see where it goes.
But the Tacoma that we're looking at right here is, I'm looking at the photo of it right now.
I'm so excited.
It's just, raised air intake. It looks like a Prinsu style rack on the top. It's like 33-inch tall tires, skid plates, rock rails, lockers, like sweet.
Like everything that you would need. I mean,
seriously cool.
I know.
But I do hope you're right. And I think this is the way that I feel too. I really hope that we can get that 1,700 pound payload, extra cab, SR5 with a locker and a manual. Please, Toyota, give us the Scotty spec. That's the truck that I want.
So let's go on to this TRD off-road.
Okay.
I'm going to read some of the specs from the sheet. It gets the iForce engine as standard. So we actually really haven't talked about that.
The iForce Max.
No.
Are you saying TRD off-road?
TRD off-road,
okay, got it.
278 horsepower, 317 pound-feet of torque, and a manual transmission is available. Mm-hmm. To me, that's really exciting.
Super
I love
exciting.
the idea of kind of that base Tacoma that's just charming and cool and works, and you can take it anywhere. You can get the iForce Max. That obviously comes with the 8-speed automatic. That gives you more power. That's 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. It's worth noting you lose a couple horsepower and a couple pound-feet of torque when you go to a 6-speed manual.
Yeah, just a couple. Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. It's probably tuning related or something like that. TRD Off-Road gets you, for the first time, remote reservoir shocks. Bilsteins. Again, for most people, that's kind of cool, but you're not also then paying a bunch of money for, the Fox stuff.
If you don't need it.
If you don't need it.
Yeah.
Although I will say, if the TRD Pro and the Trailhunter do come with those wider front control arms and wider rear axle, that could maybe steer me towards those vehicles. But sometimes you just don't need the wheel travel, and you don't need the width.
I wouldn't want the width or the wheel
because then you're talking full size truck in a mid-size platform, which is, believe me, the amalgamation of parts, really cool. Available 33-inch tires on the TRD off-road. I think that's really cool.
17-inch wheels, you can get that on
17
the TRD.
or 18s, electronic rear locker, front stabilizer bar disconnect. I mean, it just seems that to me, yes, the Trailhunter is cool. The TRD Pro is just kind of a continuation of a model that we already know. But this TRD off-road has all of the exciting kind of elements to it.
Yep.
Man, that's
except for the only thing that throws me off is it just says double cab only. And it's like, can you get the TRD off-road in the extra cab?
Well, right here it says double cab only.
Yeah, I know. So
see, for me, for dog people, double cab's that's the only consideration.
My thought is, can you just option in the rear locker? Can you just click the option for the rear locker on an SR5?
So
extra cab.
I think
It doesn't say it on
So on the SR5, it looks like the only way that you can get the multi-link rear suspension, so the 5-link, it's going to be cab. Tundra, Land Cruiser-esque, is on the double cab.
Yep.
So I do like that they're still offering the landscaping truck.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's
the truck I want.
That's really
I
cool.
want the manual transmission SR5 extra cab, 17-inch wheels.
I mean, there's a huge range of stuff here.
There is.
Which is pretty cool.
It is. It's very cool.
You know, and for the pre-runner guys, there is a TRD pre-runner if you're going to build it into a little go fast truck on your own.
Yeah.
And they did keep the leaf springs on that, which is going to just be easier to get more travel out of and cheaper to do so. With these multi-link coil rear ends, there's packaging problems on trying to get too much wheel travel out of it usually. But you know, I'm really excited about the engines. That like, was it a 3-liter V6 that they had? 3.5.
3.5. Yeah.
It did its job, you know, in stock form. It was pretty fuel efficient.
It was literally the first gear in the automatic that killed it.
Yeah. Once you were going, it was fine.
It was fine.
I mean, I'm so excited that the aftermarket's huge for the Tacoma, and I like messing with stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't help to think, but, you know, Cobb or some of these engine tuning companies, with Toyota being fairly conservative, 2.4 liters producing 278 horsepower. Boy,
yeah.
Imagine some bolt-ons that could get you reliably 30 or 40 horsepower.
Again, or you just do the iForce Max and you're at 326 horsepower. That's crazy numbers. Those are crazy numbers out of a midsize. Crazy numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they have to, because this EV wave is coming, and, you know, I mean, look at the Rivian, like 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or something, right? Electric is just really quick.
The one thing that I noted was with the iForce Max that the torque is nearly double what the outgoing Atkinson cycle motor is.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It'll be good. And, you know, the Tacoma, we're obviously really big here on sticking within that gross vehicle weight. We know through experience that is where vehicles perform the best.
Well, it just keeps you from getting in a bunch of trouble if you get in an accident.
But people do overload the crap out of their Tacomas. And historically speaking, they take it. You know, I mean, anytime you see a slightly built Tacoma with a 4-wheel camper on the back, they're probably, you know, 50 to 100% over their GVWR, and it just works.
Yep.
So now we're getting, in theory, a redesigned, stronger chassis shared with Land Cruiser, Tundra, etc. More horsepower, more torque,
bigger brakes,
like all of these things that
they're addressing it, handily addressing our feedback.
I am so glad that I don't have to make the Tacoma the butt of my jokes anymore. Now, I don't know about Tacoma people. You know,
they're the nicest people. I don't know.
There's gonna be a guy out there that's gonna tell you about his isodynamic performance seats, and that's all.
That'll be a new customer to Toyota. That was not like a traditional Tacoma buyer.
Yeah,
that'll be.
I mean, they're not making STIs anymore. So
let's talk about payload real quick. And towing. The maximum towing has now moved to 6,500 pounds, which it's going to meet the needs of most towing requirements. It is less than some of the competition. So Gladiator's 7,500 pounds. And
it's super important to remember too, that towing capacity, payload capacity, like all of these things, while we like them, they do actually inhibit a bit of off-road performance. You're attaining that through larger rear axles, which have bigger ring and pinions, which means less final ground clearance, you know,
less articulation, usually.
Less articulation. Payload and towing generally comes at the cost of a higher spring rate, which sacrifices ride quality, articulation, all these things. So there is a sweet spot, and full-size trucks do exist.
Yeah.
You know, but we're not talking 800 pounds of payload anymore. We're talking 1,700 pounds of payload.
It's a big difference. Yeah. And for us, we have always established that our minimum expected payload out of a mid-sized truck is 1,600 pounds, and they've beat that. Toyota has beat it. They've hit the numbers that we think are important. Yeah. And yes, tow 6,500 pounds. And it says here that the iForce extra cab grade maximum payload increases to 1,709 pounds on the TRD off-road.
Which is really cool. That means 4-wheel drive.
I would think so, because otherwise they would call it the TRD pre-runner. So it says, if you can get a TRD off-road at 1,709 pounds of payload, like, good job, Toyota.
That's really
That's
cool.
incredible.
Like, I want one.
I know.
And that's weird.
I know.
That's weird.
I totally, I mean, yeah, maybe it'll just be like I
there's
bring it all
something-
back to the white Tacoma
There's
again.
something so charming about the concept of the Tacoma. Reliable,
Yes.
has a great residual value. I mean, speaking of residual values, I don't know if you've looked at what used Tacomas are selling for right now.
Oh, yeah. Like, people are retiring.
People are retiring.
Yeah.
Like,
Paula's going to sell her Tacoma and she's going to go live in Spain for 25 years.
I mean, we're talking $50,000 used Tacomas
Yeah.
with 30, 40, 50, 60,000 miles on them. We're talking 100,000 mile trucks for 30s and 40s, and they're not that much less. I should say.
Yeah, no, you want to, but that's why we're seeing the dealer markup.
You know, again, I think Trailhunter, it's so cool. I'm just going to read this out loud on Toyota's press release. All new Trailhunter is a factory-developed overlanding rig built from the ground up with the latest integrated off-road equipment from ARB, Old Man Emu, and Rigid. That's really cool
Yeah.
to see in a Toyota press release.
No doubt.
Because this is historically like a company that has been very conservative and, you know, kind of gave everybody what they needed, not what they wanted. Now we have a Tacoma that has needs and wants covered.
I mean, Matt Scott just says he wants one. So that's saying
maybe.
something.
We'll see. I mean, I love the idea of a small little truck because trucks are getting so big
Yeah.
that they're getting really, really hard to park.
Mhm.
I mean, if you drive it every day, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, try and park an F-250.
Yeah, they're the real deal. They're big.
Well, but then all vehicles are getting so big now due to crash safety, and people just want bigger stuff. And we're in this huge economic boom, you know, or coming off of it, or whatever we want to say. The parking spaces haven't gotten any wider, and it's really cool to,
Yeah.
you know, I'm looking at this Trailhunter, and I'm like, boy, how great would that be to literally buy that, throw like an AT camper on there from AT Overland, and just go. Like, you don't have to modify. Like, it even
Nothing.
has 12 volt in the
Yeah. It's ready to go.
in the bed already.
Yeah, it's ready to go.
Super cool. But it's the TRD
what do you-
off-road that is actually the one that I think is,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm looking at it and I'm like, the 33s, you know, it's got some skid plates, the front sway bar disconnect. It's got a lot of the gadgets with that multi-terrain select that honestly, I don't really pay that much attention to. Boy, that seems like a really great kind of realistic option
Yeah.
that should be pretty popular.
What do you see for potential downsides, cons?
I'm worried about build quality, to be honest. A lot of the touch points on the new Toyota truck stuff, just, I hope that they're meeting the competition in that area. I know you can't have everything, but the build quality on the Tundra that I was looking at wasn't, I know it's going to run forever. Like there's a difference between like reliability and build quality. Like Toyota's never.
Yeah. Durability, reliability, and build quality are all three different things.
Yeah. So I'm worried about the build quality on this because, you know, the last generation Tundra was very basic, but it worked and it didn't rattle and it didn't squeak. And when you slam the door, you were slamming the door.
Even 200,000 miles later. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the plastics and things that Toyota has been using lately, like I can't help but compare Tundra to this. There's chassis similarities, and it's kind of that new design language was brought in with Tundra. I hope that the build quality is there. Again,
I think we should make a trip. We should get a Tacoma and drive it to the manufacturing plant in Guanajuato, Mexico. I think we should just get the nod, wink, wink from Toyota PR and let us drive it down to Old Mexico and go check out the plant for ourselves in person.
There's also an airplane.
Okay, you can meet me. You can meet me there.
No, I'm kidding. That'd be a really fun drive.
That would be a really fun drive.
I think big
Any other
downsides,
things? Any other
it's
things
going to
come
be
to
the
mind?
dealer markups on these.
Yeah.
Particularly in the Trailhunter, I think it's really cool. But I think you have to consider, you know, it's kind of like the joke. I'm going to use the Raptor as the example. When the Raptor first came out, yeah, it was really cool. But, you know, there was definitely the skeptics that were like, oh, well, you're paying $10,000 or $15,000 more for shocks, wheels, and tires. And then people were paying on top of that dealer markups. And then, you know, it's like, okay, it was worth it at the MSRP price increase, but will it be worth it at the actual selling price? That would be my concern. Mm-hmm. And again, that's not Toyota. That's just
it's not
scummy
Toyota's
car
fault.
dealers.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just get rid of them. So
there's been some efforts.
yeah,
for sure.
and again, there's good ones out there, but
and that's the problem that the dealerships are going to have. Eventually, they'll put themselves out of business because you can only abuse people for so long before finally consumers say that's enough.
Again, with the Tundra, with the added, ADMs and stuff that they're putting onto it for the TRD Pro, I don't know if I'll follow through, but I was so frustrated. I went and I put a deposit down on a Rivian because there's so much more truck there for actually the same amount of money.
And you get the experience of it can be delivered here to the office.
Yeah, and it's done, and I don't.
And they'll walk you through the truck.
Drama. I don't have to get forced into the finance office where another weirdo is going to try and fleece me for 5 points over their buy rate. Oh, by the way, car dealers do that. So if you're getting a 5% interest rate, there's probably 2 or 3 points that are on the table that they're making. So there's just all of these pain
When you buy a
points.
Rivian, you actually talk to a banker at Chase.
Yeah.
It's like an actual bank.
Yeah. So I think that'll be a downside, but I don't think we know enough yet. I'm seeing a lot of positivity here on this vehicle. I applaud Toyota for listening to the market, and it's going to come down to build quality for me.
The only thing that I can find so far, because there's some unanswered questions around some packaging, but it's the 18-inch wheel on the Trailhunter. So that also comes back to your recommendation around the TRD off-road as opposed to the TRD off-road Pro. The 18-inch wheel, that's not a benefit in my mind when you can get a 17. But the Pros, we can still get a manual transmission Tacoma. How amazing is that? In 2024, there's going to be a 6-speed manual Tacoma still available.
Turbocharged.
What a miracle. Yeah, just a cool little engine. And I do like turbo motors a lot, and these turbo gas motors.
It's where and how they make their power, which is down low, which is how you are actually using it on the street.
That's right.
And on the trail.
That's right. They've completely addressed the power issue from the last model in both the fact that they've added 2 gears to the automatic. So it's going to have a lower first gear because that was the Achilles heel of the other one. So it's going to be way better loaded up or pulling a trailer or whatever because it makes way more power and it has 2 more cogs in it. So bunch of different engine options. We only had 1 engine before that. Now we got 3 different motor options depending on what you want to get. And then swaybar disconnect.
Yeah. The swaybar disconnect is a bigger deal than people think.
Yeah, it just makes a huge difference.
Historically, that has been reserved for the for the Rubicons. It is on the Gladiator and it's on the Wrangler. Now it's on the 4xe Grand Cherokee Trailhawk. It really does make a difference. Huge. If you're just cruising down a dirt road and you turn that off, you're going to have somebody in the back seat go, "What did you just do?"
You feel it.
Truthfully, I did not expect to see that.
When I was reading through the spec, I'm thinking, this is unbelievable. Because Toyota, it's normally incremental. You see incremental improvements from them. They already make a great vehicle, then they incrementally improve it. This is literally like Toyota said, we're either going to have to address this competition, which is coming at us rapidly, or we're going to face a lot of market share loss. And they addressed it.
And everybody in the last couple of weeks has showed their cards. I'm not saying that Toyota is going to come on top, but there is this gut feeling within me that if you have the Ranger Raptor, you have the Colorado, and you have this TRD Pro Trailhunter, I like the split from Toyota, but let's just say those things, you put them all out there. There's something to the history and legacy of reliability and simplicity that Toyota has that would truthfully lead me to choose the Toyota product over the GM or the Ford product.
Sure.
Because again, like we said, we've been in so many sketchy places in the world. And when you're in a sketchy place in the world, you grab the Toyota.
Yeah, you want it to make the starting noise. Yes.
Yeah.
But what'll be interesting is...
Not that the others won't be great options.
To your point, none of this stuff is proven out yet, but Toyota does have the legacy of reliability that we should be able to continue to see. The one thing that'll be interesting, though, is within moments, we're going to see now the Bison AEV... Colorado on 35s with jounces, hydraulic jounces and winch, just crazy.
And that's
crazy
probably
trucks.
the vehicle to compare to the Trailhunter.
Yeah.
Which is where it then kind of ends up a little bit more Toyota, where it is a little bit more conservative.
Yeah. But just
to
look
GM's credit, they went wild.
But look at it. I mean, just look at the fact that we can get a Gladiator. Look at the fact that we can get a 35-inch tire on an AEV-equipped Colorado with front and rear lockers, Multimatic suspension, hydraulic jounces. This is nutty territory. And the Tacoma is now playing in nutty territory. 33-inch tires.
Yeah. And on the
big horsepower
GM,
numbers.
you can get similar torque in the 400s, but without a hybrid system.
That's true. Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. No, it's going to be fun to compare.
It's super exciting. You know, we saw so much competition go into the full size space. We love full size trucks, but they have size limitations.
Yeah.
You know, for the way a lot of people are going to use their vehicles in North America as this kind of rock crawling with roof tent kind of thing that overlanding's kind of pushing towards. This is really an interesting vehicle.
Totally.
So.
And nice job, Toyota.
Yeah.
Like this was fun to talk about.
Yeah. I have to find a new person to make fun of.
Just make fun of me often. I like
nice.
that. I'm too nice. Well, there's plenty of things to make fun of me about, though.
Yeah.
I mean, start with my barber. All right. Well, that was so fun to talk about the new Tacoma. We thank you all for listening. And seriously, if somebody knows a Toyota dealer out there that is not gouging customers, please let us know. We'd love to share that widely with all of you. And until then, we'll talk to you next time.